Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. Okay, what's going on, guys? We are gathered once again at the Church of Marvel Comics to give praise. What's going on, guys? We are covering Superior Spider-Man, and I know a lot of you guys who saw my coverage of Superior Spider-Man are like, you're covering this again? No, this is actually the new run. This is the new run of Superior Spider-Man coming out of really Spider-Geddon. But here's the funny thing about this, all right? Here's the funny thing about this, and I kind of like the way that Christos Gage did this because it's what I did. You can read the original Superior Spider-Man, and really you can read the Amazing Spider-Man run up to it, so basically Spider-Man Big Time, which we covered all that stuff, but you can read the original Superior Spider-Man, and then you go into All New, All Different Marvel, and then you go into Clone Saga, and then you skip Spider-Geddon, and then you go into, like, you read like Secret Empire, stuff like that, and then you go into Superior Spider-Man. And here's the reason why. So initially when this picks up, we're basically dealing with like Stiltman, right? And Stiltman was always like a D-list villain. And it kind of makes sense that we're sort of picking up in this way where it's just, it's really more of like, here's what Superior Spider-Man's doing, not necessarily the core of the story itself. And so it's really kind of Christos Gage sort of giving us like this refresher, this reminder, right? And so as we go through this little bit where he's fighting Stiltman and Stiltman's getting quite readily destroyed, the idea behind this is that when you had the original Superior Spider-Man, it was Dr. Octopus kind of keeping himself alive. Dr. Octopus looked at Peter Parker and he perceived his body as perfect. And so what he did is he essentially like found a way to more or less like sneak his mind into Peter Parker's body using this little device more or less. And it allowed him to like take the whole thing over. That goes to Peter Parker basically having his own mind pushed into the back of his own body and Dr. Octopus taking over. And that's when the original Superior Spider-Man story takes over, right? And so then you go into that line of comics which lasted about 33 issues, and then you go into the Return of Peter Parker, and then you get Secret Wars 2015. So following Secret Wars 2015, you get All New, All Different Marvel, you get Parker Industries, all that kind of good stuff, and Dr. Octopus was just kind of there. The way he was written by Dan Slott, he was inside of a robot and just kind of biding his time, and then you go into Clone Saga. And the idea behind Clone Saga and what came after that was you had stuff like the Red Goblin and so on and so forth, where Norman Osborn was bonded to like the Carnage symbiote. But the way that this played out is you essentially had Dr. Octopus who got his own body back by virtue of clone technology, right? Like New You, the Jackal, those of you guys who remember Clone Conspiracy. And I don't think we ever really covered it. So maybe we can go back and cover it at some point in time. But the idea behind this is it was basically Dr. Octopus's new lease on life. And so instead of having both Superior Spider-Man and regular Spider-Man fighting in New York, what Marvel did and what Christos Gage did is they moved Superior Spider-Man to San Francisco. Now, for those of you guys who have been following Marvel for a long time, that's usually how this goes. When Marvel wants to move a character to a new location, they put him in San Francisco. Why? I don't know. Marvel has an affinity for San Francisco. Everybody's been there before, right? Like the X-Men have been based out of San Francisco. Well, really, it was San Francisco and then Utopia, but the two were very closely intertwined, so it might as well be the same thing. Daredevil fought in San Francisco for a while during Jerry Dugan's run, I think, and people did not like it. They did not like Daredevil outside of Hell's Kitchen. You've seen a lot of characters leave and like go to other places, like West Coast Avengers was based out of San Francisco, I'm pretty sure. So like Marvel loves San Francisco for some reason, and I'm not really even sure why, but it's basically kind of a return to form for Superior Spider-Man. So it's basically like you read the original Spider-Man Big Time by Dan Slott, then you go into Superior Spider-Man, then you read Spider-Man after All New, All Different Marvel, and then you read Clone Conspiracy, and then you read this, and then you're done. And that's basically it. It's pretty easy to kind of skip forward through all this. You could sort of skip over the entirety of Spider-Geddon, which works because that's what I did. But one of the things that's going on with Dr. Octopus or Superior Spider-Man at this point is that he's basically masquerading as a guy named Elliot Tolliver, essentially just kind of like a teacher at Horizon University. Now, there are a couple things that need to go on here that we need to talk about for a second, namely Superior Octopus. And the reason why was because when Dr. Octopus came back and basically became like a good guy, he operated under the moniker of Superior Octopus. The problem with that is the name Octopus is synonymous with like evil deeds, right? Like Dr. Octopus. He was that character and an enemy of Spider-Man for so long that people viewed him as inherently a bad guy. And so in order to kind of like become a full-on good guy, he basically took on the Superior Spider-Man mantle. But what this also does is it confirms that like Horizon Labs is still a concept. And it always kind of had been, ever since it was introduced in Dan Slott's run on Amazing Spider-Man, you know, from Big Time going forward, Horizon Labs was always kind of like this huge think tank, right? Like the best and brightest minds in the world really kind of come together. It's different from Future Foundation of the Fantastic Four, right? In the sense that the Fantastic Four's Future Foundation is focused more on kids, the brightest kids in the world, and kind of looking at them as a means to achieve a better world, but it's also a much smaller knit group of people. So it's basically like the Fantastic Four and friends is really all it is. Whereas Horizon Labs is like, hey, are you like a genius? Well, then come check out Horizon Labs. Now, the other part of this is, of course, Dr. Octopus kind of basically like falsifying documentation and probably faking information and obviously using a fake identity. For the most part, he's just kind of pretending to be, Elliot Tolliver. It's not actually who he is. But for all intents and purposes, he has the brains to back it up. And that's one of the cool things that kind of goes on here is this Christos Gage sort of running through things and saying, hey, look, he's obviously turned over a new leaf. He's trying to become a good guy, but it's essentially the same Superior Spider-Man you knew, right? So it's like the guy who basically doesn't have a problem with like killing villains, and he will if it's the easiest road to take. But if it's more practical to like throw them in jail, then okay, he'll send them to jail. The guy who's kind of impartial when it comes to villains, more or less. But Anna Maria is also part of the equation. Now, Anna Maria was basically a love interest that was brought in by Dan Slott during his whole run, or really as part of the events of his run on Spider-Man, and then became a love interest of Superior Spider-Man. But at the time, she didn't know it was Dr. Octopus. She thought it was Peter Parker. And so when the time came when it was all kind of revealed, of course, Anna Maria felt betrayed and essentially like walked away from Dr. Octopus, Otto Octavius and all that kind of stuff. And the two of them haven't necessarily been estranged so much as they've just not, where she just doesn't really like him. But those are a couple of things that I wanted to get out of the way. But from this, then we go into like, Denson Macabre and Digger, and I don't really know why. and as funny as this is to see, it kind of worries me. And the reason why is because Denson Macabre and Digger are a couple members of a group called the Night Shift. And the Night Shift is an old school thing, right? Like Captain America, I think it was like 330 back in 1987 when they first popped up. And then like Tower of Shadow is actually where Digger came back. The reason why they call him Digger is because his modus operandi back in the day, like his whole scheme was to basically like bury people alive while reading them like horror stories, essentially. It's kind of funny, but pretty screwed up at the same time. I mean, I'll be honest, like if I read a news article and they were like, this man's been found guilty of like, he's a serial killer, and he was reading like macabre stories to people as he was burying them alive, I might chuckle a bit because it's bad, but it's a little bit funny at the same time. I feel like a horrible human being. But the overall gist of this is that these are guys who are basically in some form or fashion associated with the undead. The other half of this is that they're basically goofs, and they're not really characters to be taken seriously, right? Like literally, Dr. Octopus busts in on this thing, and there's like a crazy cult going on, and Digger's there, and Denson Macabre starts doing like this hypnotic dance and basically turns him over to the police, and that's basically it. The reason why they're working with Octopus actually goes a little bit before this, but essentially like they work directly for him, right? They're kind of like not really his agents on the street. I mean, to a degree they are, but it's kind of like, you guys take care of my light work, I'll focus on the important things. So they're really more employees and actual like teammates and things that need to focus on them, things that need to focus on him directly. Now, the next thing that kind of gets brought in here, and as far as I'm aware, this is the new introduction, is a character named Miss Hernandez. Now, we're not going to see a whole lot of her. She's just kind of a chick that sort of takes a liking to to Otto Octavius and kind of hits on him a little bit. But again, things are pretty strenuous between Otto and Anna Maria. And again, it's kind of a cool thing because it would have been very, very easy for Christos Gage to kind of carry over all the stuff that Dan Slott had done and to not really make it his own. But it is kind of cool to see him do that. To see these two that are basically enemies, despite the fact that Otto Octavius is still very much in love with her, is kind of a cool little moment because the way that Anna Maria was done, she was super intelligent, but always somewhat a little conflicted about the character of like Spider-Man, or at least how, as he approached her, pretending to be Spider-Man. And when like the whole thing really came to a head, it was like, okay, I don't want to have anything to do with this. And so kind of putting her back in that situation, making her like a character that's interesting again, is actually pretty cool. And I really love that whole idea. But of course, while the two of them are fighting, we're suddenly met with the arrival of Terrax the Tamer. Now, we've never really talked about Terrax, and Terrax would actually make a great villain for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But Terrax is a guy named Tyro, and he's basically a mutant on his own, well, at least he was on his home planet, who had the ability to manipulate the Earth, right? So like geokinesis is basically, or terrakinesis, if you want to call it that, the ability to like manipulate the physical structure of a planet, right? Not really its environment, but like the ground, more or less. Now, when he became a Herald of Galactus, that power was amplified several times over. Eventually, he defected and went off and did his own thing. I would call him a free radical, if I'm being honest with Marvel Comics. I mean, he's there, but it feels like he's not really supposed to be there, because he's just kind of been free floating. Like, he's just kind of been there, and like stuff happens sometimes. And like, there was one story, what was it, Cosmic Powers, where Thanos decides to fight like every major powerhouse in the Marvel Universe, which is actually kind of a cool story. Like, you see Terrax there, but for the most part, Marvel never really seemed to know what to do with him. He's had small, cool moments here and there, but again, it's just kind of a guy who's there and it's whatever. But him showing up here is because apparently he seeks to conquer the world. Christos Gage does not really give us a motivation behind his character other than the fact that like he wants to conquer the world. And again, that's the nature of Terrax. That's kind of how he gets used in comics these days. He shows up, he fights a guy, he gets defeated, and that's that. Then he's gone. And then maybe he does or does not come back later on down the line. The funny thing about this is that Dr. Octopus, like Superior Spider-Man, calls in Night Shift. Digger gets cut in half. So they take his halves and they're just like, screw this, and they leave. And then it's basically just Superior Spider-Man again. Now, the reason why I say this kind of worries me is because one of the things I loved about the original Superior Spider-Man run is it was almost like Superior Spider-Man was like Severus Snape, right? From like Harry Potter, where he was a conflicted guy. He was super arrogant and full of hubris, but you loved that about him. And that's one of the things that I loved about Superior Spider-Man, right? He's just kind of like, hey, like I'm being a good guy, but like I'm better than you. Like that was basically it, right? Like, hey guys, I'm Superior Spider-Man, and remember, I know more than you do. And that was that was essentially the gist of it. And it was kind of a cool little thing, but there was also kind of a serious ongoing tone with the story. The overall gist of like the original Superior Spider-Man run was Dr. Octopus has always been a bad guy. He takes on the body of Peter Parker, and then he like tries to be a good guy, and then he realizes that like Peter Parker's been pulling his punches all this time, and like he's a lot stronger than he originally let on, and there has to be like some measure of restraint, and you can't just go through and attack people. Like when he punched the jaw of Scorpion, he like punched his jaw off. So it's like, wow, like okay. And in understanding the nature of restraint and being a hero, he gradually became a hero. And it was almost like he was dragging his feet and grudgingly doing it, but realized it was the right thing to do. And ultimately, by the time the whole thing ended, like Superior Spider-Man was a full-on hero. And so it was cool. Like it's one of the things we loved about him. The problem with throwing in little stuff like this is that it could almost take what could be a really cool and interesting series and turn it into like kind of slapstick and nonsensical and take away from what made made Superior Spider-Man so awesome. It's kind of what I'm afraid of, but this is Christos Gage we're talking about, right? Like if any writer can be trusted to tell a great story in Marvel Comics and to do a character justice, it's Christos Gage. Like the guy is legit when it comes to making stories. So again, it may be something not to worry about, but it's something that just kind of crossed my mind as I was going through this. But for the most part, Terrax the Tamer is way beyond Superior Spider-Man. While Terrax is not necessarily a herald of Galactus, he still does possess a portion of the power cosmic, and that's usually how it works, right? Like Galactus creates a new herald, he gives them a portion of the power cosmic, which usually amplifies their existing powers if they have them, or gives them a whole new set of, like gives them powers in their entirety if they didn't have them. Such was the case with the Silver Surfer, or Frankie Ray, or like Firelord to a degree. And then like they'll eventually rebel, they'll leave, but they'll maintain the part of their power cosmic. And so with Terrax, it's still that way. And so with Superior Spider-Man facing off against him, he's quite readily destroyed. And that's when a truce of sorts is created between Anna Maria and ultimately Superior Spider-Man. And the reason why is because he says, look, I know you don't like me, and I know you've been pissed off at me, and I know you actually love me, you're just having a hard time showing it. But what I need is your help here. And so what he does is basically get her to kind of help him develop a device that can siphon off energy. Now, this is kind of a cool thing, and it's actually a cool throwback, because what he ends up saying is that like when it gets brought to Superior Spider-Man by, Night Shift and Anna Maria comes along for the ride, and he uses it on Terrax, one of the things he says is, this is what Dr. Doom had done to the Silver Surfer. But it's kind of a cool little thing, because basically he goes and like siphons off a portion of the power cosmic from Terrax, and in turn is endowed with the power cosmic himself. Now, here's the nature of the way this works, is at the outset, we would look at this and we would say, Superior Spider-Man basically became God, right? Because the power cosmic is limitless. But Christos Gage almost kind of writes this caveat in there, right? Like when the two of them are facing off against each other, the fight's basically even. And it's the various powers of Spider-Man being amplified by the power cosmic, and then in turn, like, facing off against Terrax and handling him quite readily. Now, the tide begins to shift, and the reason for that is because of the fact that, of course, Terrax, as he states, is more familiar with the power cosmic than Superior Spider-Man is, which makes sense. So, like, he understands the nuances of it, how it can and can't be used, and so on and so forth, and the small little things that a person who just got it wouldn't really understand about it. And so, for the most part, like, Terrax takes the upper hand, pretty quickly, and then ultimately begins to start defeating Superior Spider-Man. That's when we learn the true motivation and the true basis behind this, that with Terrax's axe kind of being, left to the side, which is essentially Terrax's equivalent of like the Silver Surfer's surfboard. It's kind of part and parcel to himself, and he can endow it with energies and so on and so forth. Superior Spider-Man takes it. And when he does, what we end up finding out here is what Superior Spider-Man's been doing is he's basically been analyzing the power cosmic while he's been fighting Terrax, right? So like he's literally been like using this power cosmic to study how it works, at the same time listening to the things that Terrax the Tamer is saying, and then like coming to an understanding of how the power functions. And that's one of the things that makes Superior Spider-Man so cool, is his mind is always multitasking and doing a variety of different things all at the same time. And so what he basically does is he realizes if the power cosmic as it's being used by Terrax is basically limitless, then in turn, like the power cosmic can be turned into anything. And so that's what he does. He literally turns it into what's essentially a poison pill and kind of poisons Terrax from the inside, right? Kind of overpowering him with his own power. And that's why I say, for the most part, when Christos Gage writes this, he has Superior Spider-Man say, okay, the way the power cosmic works is it's relative to each person. It amplifies their powers or gives them powers or something like that. But the power cosmic in and of itself is almost kind of like an artificial restraint. It's almost like a fence, that the power they get is limited in scope, and then in turn, like what they can do is limited in scope because the fence is there. What Dr. Octopus has figured out how to do is cut a hole in the fence. And so now he's not limited by the scope of the power cosmic he possesses, meaning it's not just limited to the powers of Spider-Man, more or less. He can do anything with it now. And that's kind of the cool thing, because in understanding that, he basically has it contained into a storage device and then has it put away. Now, of course, this is when Anna Maria, steps in and says, hey, look, I'm not handing you over to the cops, right? I mean, I know I said I would, but I'm not handing you over to the cops because you were willing to sacrifice yourself in order to save the city, which obviously a bad guy wouldn't do. And so with this power cosmic sort of hidden away, or at least kept behind a kind of shield, a kind of storage device, of course, Anna Maria's concern is that Dr. Octopus will in turn try to use it and then go on to do, evil deeds and some pretty shady stuff. And that's when, when Superior Spider-Man sits down and says, no, I'm literally trying to be a good guy, right? Like, I'm actually trying to reform. You have to believe me. I'm not trying to be a villain here. I'm a guy who's trying to take all the right steps and do all the right things. And so what ends up happening is, in this moment, Anna Maria really kind of harkens back to this conversation she had with Peter Parker, right? Where she's talking to Peter Parker, the actual Spider-Man, and where Peter looks at Superior Spider-Man and says, okay, maybe I did screw up here. Maybe he really is a bad guy. And throughout this whole scheme where he's defeating Terrax and he basically wins at the end of the day, that he's going to try to use the power cosmic for nefarious ends, Anna Maria almost kind of has a change of heart and says, okay, what if we believe him, right? Like, what if we assume that he's actually telling the truth? Like, what if we assume he's actually trying to be a good guy? Then what do we do from here? And the response is, put him back in contact with other people. And that's really kind of the stance that's given by Anna Maria, right? It's, you need to go out into the world, like, you need to go out into the city. One, you need to help with the rescue process. And two, you need to talk directly with the people who are suffering from this, right? Like, go to the ground level and understand the people that you're trying to help, right? Because that's one of the things that really always kind of made Superior Spider-Man so arrogant, because it was always kind of like, I'm better than all of you, I'm greater than all of you, I'm smarter than all of you, I'm saving you because you guys are incapable of doing anything on your own. And Anna Maria's stance here is always kind of, is really kind of like, but there's a strength in the average person that you're just not accepting, that you're not acknowledging. Like, people are a lot stronger than you give them credit for, so like, stop being so arrogant and full of hubris and just go talk to them. And so it's kind of a funny thing here, because Superior Spider-Man, when he does that, begins to realize that, like, yeah, these people are capable of taking care of themselves. As a hero, it's not really that I'm like a parent protecting like some incompetent child, that I'm really more of a parent kind of guiding these people in a better direction and more working with them, as opposed to like shielding them from all forms of danger and doing it under the auspices that they're too stupid to do it on their own. And so it really kind of like brings them down a little bit. And I'm curious to see how that's going to play out with the future writing of his character, because the arrogance and the hubris of Superior Spider-Man is one of the things that made him so cool. Now, of course, this is when we end up kind of bringing back Miss Hernandez, who ends up basically saying, hey, look, so like in that conversation earlier, I was kind of hitting on you. I'd love to know if you wanted to go get dinner sometime. And of course, Superior Spider-Man says like, yes, I'm interested in that, as he should be, because I'm pretty sure Miss Hernandez, I guess maybe she's Hispanic, but she looks like she's black, and if she is, she's an older woman, and she can teach him a few things. Man, let me tell you something, man. Older women, do they know how to work it? Like, man, y'all... You don't believe me? Ask, man. Just ask in the comments. Just post a comment. Just say like, do older women know how to work it? And like anybody who's had experience with older women will be like, yeah, man. Like, that's the thing, man. Like Superior Spider-Man, man, you about to learn some stuff, man. She's gonna turn your world upside down, son. Like, you think taking over the body of Peter Parker and going from a bad guy to a good guy was an experience, was an adventure? Man, you wait. She gonna get you between the sheets. Man, she gonna wear you out. Let's. But in all seriousness, it really is Christos Gage kind of moving Superior Spider-Man in the next direction and like kind of leaving Anna Maria behind, and then having Superior Spider-Man focus on like his own love interests outside of the work of what Dan Slott did by bringing Anna Maria in. It's a cool idea because it's focusing on the nature of his character. It's focusing on kind of making the character his own. Now, of course, at the end of all this, it's not a Christos Gage story if we don't have some kind of a plot twist, and we end up finding that Master Pandemonium has returned. Why? I don't know. Master Pandemonium was a villain who appeared in West Coast Avengers #4. I have no idea why Master Pandemonium is here, but Master Pandemonium was an actor who lost a limb and then sold his soul to Mephisto in order to get it back, and Mephisto took all of his limbs and then replaced them with demons, or I guess took both his other arm and then replaced it with demons, and then of course he can like summon demons, and he's also got an upside down star on his stomach, which is where the demons are summoned from. I don't know why this guy is here, but with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.